there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 1933 sequel, Son of Kong. Now, Son of Kong is a sequel to the 1933 film King Kong. It's a lesser-known sequel. A lot of people don't really talk about this one, and except for diehard Kong fans, and I can see why. There's really not a lot here to recommend the film. To really make it a movie that's really going to stand the test of time, or going to be a film that a lot of people are going to seek out. But it does have its moments, though. Admittedly, this isn't really a rant. I didn't really hate the movie. It didn't piss me off, but I wouldn't say I was a big fan of Son of Kong, but I wouldn't say that I thought it was a total pile of garbage either. I just thought it was fairly dull and boring for the most part. And it didn't really start to get going or get interesting until the 46-minute mark. And by that time, it was almost already over because the movie is only 69 minutes. So it's finally gets interesting and stuff starts to happen and you get some cool stop motion effects about 46 minutes into the movie. And by that point, you got maybe about 20 minutes or so until the movie's over. And I could kind of look at it as a positive because it didn't last any longer than that. So there's that. But that means there really wasn't a lot there to begin with for this sequel. It also felt a little bit kind of like a cop-out in terms of a sequel. It's like, do we really need another King Kong film, especially this soon? And also the whole thing where, Kong, the whole uniqueness of Kong is kind of ruined with this movie. Because it's like, he's not the first Kong. He's not the first and only Kong. There's a little Kong. They're just like, really? Do we really need a little Kong? Was that necessary? This film shows and proves that there was such a thing as a cash grab sequel all the way back in 1933. Because that's exactly what this was. This is a cash grab sequel to cash in on the name of King Kong and the popularity of the film. Now, the movie is directed by Ernest Schoedsack, who was also one of the co-directors for the 1933 classic King Kong. He also produced the film. It has a screenplay by Ruth Rose. It stars Robert Armstrong as Carl Denham. That's definitely one of the positives for me from this film was Robert Armstrong's performance as Carl Denham. I really loved him in King Kong, and it's really nice to see him again here. And as a lead, he actually does a good job carrying the film for the most part. Helen Mack plays Hilda Peterson, who is a love interest for Carl. And she's got a nice little spunk to her. She's cute, but there's really not a lot to her character. At least with Ann Darrow, she actually spent most of the film being a damsel in distress, so at least there was that. She's just there. She just hangs on and just joins up with Robert Armstrong and the rest of the group that are on the ship. She's a stowaway, and she basically just is there to be a love interest for Carl Denham. Frank Reicher also comes back at Captain Engelhorn. He's there. John Marston plays Nils Hellstrom, who's the villain of the piece, but he's extremely weak. There's not much to this guy. Apparently he's trying to be funny, but I don't really see what's funny about this character. He's drunk a lot. I guess that means it's hilarious. I don't know. Overall, just a very bland villain. The villain, and it's crazy to me how King Kong didn't really have a clear antagonist. The antagonist in a lot of ways was Kong, or just the elements that the sailors and the people from the crew of the Venture were thrust into on this island. That was their antagonist, was the elements, was the unknown, was the dinosaurs, was all the creatures and monsters on the island. Here, it's just they have a nemesis here, which is Hellstrom, who I guess was a member of the other crew, and he tags along for the ride with this sequel, and he's a murderer because he killed Hilda's dad in an earlier scene in the movie. Overall, it's just like, why is this guy tagging along for so long? Because he's not a very good villain. and he's an asshole, and he murdered Hilda's dad. So I really would like him to get eaten as soon as possible. Eventually he does, but it just doesn't really leave much of an impact because the character didn't have that much impact to begin with. You have Victor Wong, who plays Charlie. He returns. He's just there just to be, I guess, comic relief, but it's not really very funny. Ed Brady plays a character named Red, and Noble Johnson and Steve Clemente both come back as the Native Chief and the Witch Doctor, and Clarence Wilson has an uncredited role as Hilda's dad. Now, the movie also features music by Max Steiner. The score here is actually pretty solid once it actually shows up, because there are a lot of scenes in the film where there's no music at all. And the same thing kind of applied to the 1933 film, but for the most part that had a consistent amount of music in it, so it didn't feel like there was a lot of dead air. There's a lot of that in this movie, but I did like how the score synced up with Little Kong's blows, and I like some of the other aspects of the score. I wouldn't say it's as good as the score for the 1933 film, but it's a solid score. The cinematography by Edward Linden, not really anything that's spectacular. The editing is solid by Ted Chessman, who also edited the 1933 King Kong movie. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things about this that are solid. It's just overall, story-wise, I think this film was really lacking, and with the characters, it was really lacking, other than Robert Armstrong. And yeah, I just felt it was a letdown. You follow up one of the most iconic and classic creature features of all time with this just really kind of lame sequel. Now, the story picks up about a month after the dramatic finale of the previous film and follows the further adventures of filmmaker Carl Denham, who is now implicated in numerous lawsuits following the destruction wrought by Kong. Carl Denham leaves New York City with the captain of the venture, Captain Englehorn, who is certain it is just a matter of time before he is similarly served. So he decides, all right, we need to get out of here. So they pool their money together, and they pull their resources together, and they decide to take the venture and try to make money shipping cargo around the Orient. But it doesn't work out too well for them. Their attempts are not very successful. They end up at the Dutch port of Dekang, Dekang, and Carl Denham is amused to see that there's a show being presented, so he and Captain Englehorn attend to this show. It turns out to be a series of performing monkeys, which I guess was supposed to be hilarious back then, capped by a song, Runaway Blues, sung by a young woman named Hilda Peterson, played by Helen Mack. And she's not a very good singer, so that kind of made that scene even a little bit more difficult to watch. It was already difficult to watch with these just lame dancing monkeys, and now you have Hilda trying to sing and she can't carry a tune. But that night, Hilda's father runs the show, stays up drinking with a Norwegian skipper named Nils Hellstrom, who had lost his ship under questionable circumstances. The two men fight, Hilda's father is killed, the tent burns down, Hilda releases all the monkeys. Like that really matters. Carl Denham and Englehorn run into Hellstrom, who was the man that sold Carl Denham the map to Kong's Island, which I was wrong on his connection with Carl, and I guess he wasn't on the crew, who were on the Venture crew for the previous film. So he convinces the two of them that there's a treasure on the island. Instead of calling bullshit, they agree with him because they're so desperate for money, and they agree to go back to the island to retrieve it. Denham meets Hilda while she's trying to recapture her monkeys. He tries to cheer her up. She then is trying to plead to him to take her with him. To take her along onto this trip to Skull Island, but he refuses. He leaves to Dekang. I keep saying Dekang, like Dekang. It's Dekang. It's Dekang. So he takes her. He refuses to take her, but she stows away on board. Hellstrom talks Hilda into silence and incites a mutiny on board the Adventure, but the sailors want no more captains, and they throw him overboard alongside Denham. So Englehorn hit Hilda and the cook and Charlie. The cook, Charlie, that's who the cook is. So now it's just Denham, Englehorn, Hilda, and the cook. The five of them, they land on Skull Island, where they discover the natives blame Carl Denham for the destruction of their village, and they are forced to move to a different part of the island. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Yeah, you are definitely to blame for the destruction of their village. Kong seemed to be fine. It didn't do anything, didn't destroy the village for many, many years until Denham and his crew came along. So they move to this different part of the island, and they're just like clockwork, which seems like a really fast amount of time. It seems rather convenient as well. Hilda and Carl, they meet a albino gorilla that's just over twice the height of a man. So it's 12 feet high. A 12 foot high albino gorilla they nickname Little Kong. They befriend him. The stop motion effect here is rather effective. It's always nice to see stop motion effects because it's a lost art. And the Little Kong is definitely portrayed more comedically than Kong. He's not a savage. He's not nearly as savage as Kong is. King Kong, as his dad was. Because, he's mild. #mild. #mild as fuck. That's Little Kong for you. There's a scene where he hurts his finger. They end up saving him, actually. They save him out of quicksand, and he hurts his finger later battling this cave bear. And he hurts his middle finger, which I think is hilarious. It hurts his middle finger, and I always thought the movie Ape was the only giant ape movie where the ape flipped the bird, but apparently this is the first one to do it. It broke new ground in that. His middle finger was hurt, so this whole time, son of the Little Kong is just flipping off everybody. He's just like slyly just telling everybody to go fuck themselves. He's like, maybe he is savage. He's just low key savage as fuck. He's like, fuck you. You killed my dad. You suck. Thank you for the bandage on my finger, but you killed my father. You ruined everything. Go suck a dick. But anyway, he fights the cave bear. There's another scene where Charlie and Hellstrom are attacked by what looks like a triceratops. Chases them into a cave. Little Kong beats the fuck out of a cave bear early, and he hurts his middle finger, and they bandage it up. Hellstrom made up his story out of just complete desperation, and he pulled it out of his ass his story about a treasure being on the island. But Denham conveniently finds authentic treasure that Little Kong helps him find, which is like a diamond necklace on some statue somewhere. And really soon afterwards, Little Kong, Carl Denham, and Hilda Peterson are attacked by a Nophosaurus, which looks a lot like a dragon. And Little Kong kills it. Hellstrom tries to escape in a lifeboat, but he's killed by a water dinosaur, pretty much. And Hilda, Captain Englehorn, and Charlie, they run to the lifeboats. But then an earthquake strikes the island, and then I guess this must be a 9.5 or a 9.95 earthquake, because the whole island starts to just fall apart. And then if that's not bad enough, now a monsoon comes in and just starts washing away everything, which I'm just like, wow, this island is either cursed or this is just really over-the-top disaster movie type stuff right here. Or it's just like, or maybe the writers, Ruth Rose, just could not come up with another way to end this film with a bang, so she's just like, oh, there's an earthquake! And then there's a monsoon, and then everything's going crazy. And the island's starting to sink into the ocean and break apart. Little Kong has his foot stuck on the top of the mountain of an island, which is just crazy. He just somehow got his foot stuck, and he can't get it out, which is crazy to me. It's like quicksand, I get it. your foot's stuck in a little stone in the top of the mountain and like a little stone thing. You're a 12-foot tall ape. I mean, you got enough strength to get out of that, but nope, doesn't happen. He sacrifices his life by saving Carl by holding him above the water until he can be rescued, which admittedly was a pretty sad moment because this little Kong seemed to be rather innocent, unlike his dad, who was just a total beast. This Kong, it was a baby Kong. It was just like, it didn't really seem like it deserved its fate. It just ended up just saving Carl because that's just the kind of ape that, you know, he is. Had a nice heart to him, and he'd rather sacrifice his life saving another, or repay his way of repaying him for saving his life. So, I mean, that was even more tragic to me because Little Kong didn't really stomp on natives. Little Kong didn't really do anything. Little Kong didn't hurt anyone. So that admittedly did get me a little bit. And he gets rescued. The film ends with Carl and Hilda Peterson throwing their lot in together, as the treasure will make the four of them extremely wealthy. Which honestly, the ending is kind of a cop out to the beginning. It's like, oh, I thought it was kind of interesting that Carl Denham is in trouble. He's broke. He's not gonna be able to get his money back. How is he gonna pay off these lawsuits? All of that. Well, he just conveniently finds a treasure on Skull Island before it gets conveniently wiped away, so they can make no more sequels. Which I'm surprised they ended it that way, because, you know, Kong was such a successful franchise. I'm surprised that they just destroyed the entire island. Just like that. Just boom. It's washed away. But yeah, that's Son of Kong. Not much of a plot. It's not really that much of a film. It's 69 minutes. It goes by super, super slow for the most part until they get to the island and they meet Little Kong. And I had some fun with the stop motion with Little Kong and the ever dinosaurs on the island. But if I want to see that kind of stuff, I could just watch the original. I could just watch the previous movie. And it's a much more consistently good movie. It's actually a great film. This is just below average. So the film was produced and released in 1933, immediately following the success of King Kong. It was a modest success. Scriptwriter Ruth Rose intentionally made no attempt to make a serious film on the logic that it could not surpass the first. She stated, if you can't make it bigger, make it funnier. And for his part, Denham's actor Robert Armstrong preferred the second film, saying the sequel offered more character development for Carl Denham. Make it funnier? What was so funny about this movie? I don't even think it was even considered that to be that funny of a comedy for audiences back in 1933. Definitely isn't that funny now. I chuckled more at lines of dialogue in the first movie than I did here. The only time I kind of smiled is at some of the antics of Little Kong, but that's it. It's a pretty bad comedy, too. The script and screenplay featured scenes of tribal warfare and a climactic dinosaur stampede during the massive cyclone earthquake that sinks Skull Island at the film's end. The stampede was going to utilize the models that had been built for creation in a 1931 film, most being used earlier in the earlier King Kong. However, these sequences were never filmed due to the film's tight budget and shooting schedule. Well, that's too bad. That would have added a little bit of an extra punch to the ending. Helen Mack's character is never referred to as Hilda in the film. The name Hilda is used in the credits as her father refers to her as Madame Helena during the show. Denham just calls her Kid. Adam, I don't know who Adam is. My bad. Little Kong was referred to as Kiko during production, but this name was never used in the film or in publicity materials. So, yeah. I don't really know what else to say about Son of Kong. It's definitely a lesser film. It's a lesser known sequel to King Kong, and it's definitely a lesser film compared to King Kong. I guess if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give Son of Kong, I would give the film 2 out of 5. It's your typical below average movie. It's a poor film in my opinion. I've seen worse, but I've also seen better. It's not a film I have any desire to watch again. Maybe if I'm feeling the need to watch some stop motion stuff, some of the stop motion sequences from this, I'll just find a compilation of it on YouTube or somewhere else. But, everything else before that is just such tough sledding for me that I just can't really say that I really was a fan of this film. And I also cannot recommend it to a lot of people either because of that. It's just a very tough sit for the first 40 minutes or so. And there's only about 20-something minutes of the movie that I really personally thought were worth my while, or worth anyone's while for that matter. But anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.